Hello everyone! Today we're going to be making Gerald. This is the video tutorial, so if you bought the zine or just picked one up, then hey, welcome to the video tutorial. So we're going to start off by making a slip knot, just like we do in the book. So to do that, we're going to take a piece of yarn. It's attached to the ball, as you can see. Okay, don't cut your yarn unless told to cut your yarn. And we are going to wrap it around our fingers like this. See it from both sides. And then we are going to make sure that's tight. Slip that yarn under that piece that we just wrapped around our fingers. Alright. And see how it makes that little loop right there? This loop right here. We are going to pull this end of the yarn tight, and there is our slip knot. So we have this little yarn tail at the end. And to start off, we're going to start off with 7 chains. So we're making the 2 big panels first, which will be the front and back of Gerald. And then we're going to make a 7 by 5 panel, or 6 by 5 technically. You still have to start off with 7 chains. But it'll be a 6 by 5 panel, and we'll make 4 of those for the sides. And then we are going to make the arms and legs. And the arms and legs will be a 6 by 11 panel. So 7 chains, 6 single crochet, and then 11 rows of single crochets. Alright, let's get started with our 7 chains. So we're going to start off, we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook like that, and then we are going to, this is called a yarn over when we wrap our yarn around our hook like this, and then we are going to pull that yarn through the loop. So that loop, that's our first chain now, and we are pulling it through the slip knot that we just made. So we're going to do that 6 more times. Wrap our yarn around, pull through a loop. That's our second chain. Wrap our yarn around, pull it through a loop. That's our third chain. And by the way, I am using a G hook, which is 4.25 millimeters. This is the correct hook size for acrylic yarn, which is a medium weight yarn. But if you are having trouble hooking your yarn, the hook's just too small, or you just are trying to get the hang of it, then I recommend using a bigger hook, such as an H or a J. Your stitches will be looser, but it's okay. The stuffing might peek through, so if you're okay with using a smaller hook, definitely use a smaller hook. But if you're not, feel free to use a bigger hook, and just know that the stuffing will show through the holes because your stitches will be looser. That was our 4th chain here. We're on our 5th chain. 6 and 7. Okay, so this is our 7 chains right here, and we are not going into this first stitch right next to the hook. We are going into the 2nd chain away from the hook, and we are going to wrap our yarn over again, pull through, and now you have 2 loops on the hook, as you can see, and you are going to wrap the yarn over your hook and pull through both of those loops. And now you have your first single crochet. So this is what a single crochet looks like. And we are going to repeat those steps, putting the hook into the next chain, wrapping the yarn over, pulling up a loop, and you have 2 loops, wrapping the yarn over our hook and pulling through both of those loops. And we have our second single crochet. And we're just going to repeat that down the row. Make sure to pull out your ball of yarn. Make sure you have enough yarn loose from the ball, because otherwise your yarn can just kind of get stuck and it's not very fun to work with that way. Alright, so we are going to do our third single crochet, pull up a loop, pull through both, do that a little slower, put your hook through, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through both loops. Now for these next rows, I will probably go a little bit faster, but feel free to watch this section again. And if you're still having trouble with a single crochet, which is perfectly understandable if this is your first time crocheting, I know that it took me several months to actually get good at crocheting. But you know, I'm glad that you are trying to crochet. It's always good to pick up a new hobby, you know? And I did that wrong, so we are going to turn our hook back around. We are going to chain one, so just yarn over and pull through. That's your first chain. And now we are going to start on our single crochets. So we have 6 single crochets on this row. We're going to go into the first single crochet that we did, yarn over, pull up a loop, just like the ones on the past row, except now we are going through this V right here, this V. We are putting both our hook through this V right here, and we are gonna try to make it so you can see this. We are yarning over and pulling through that. So as you see, we have 2 loops again, and we're going to yarn over and pull through both those loops. So instead of going through just the top, we are going through both the V's on this stitch. Anyway, the reason why you want to do a chain one at the beginning of each row is just to keep your edges straight. We don't want wonky or curvy edges for a straight panel, and this is really useful for blankets and scarves and many straight projects. I mean, if you're making a top that's worked straight and then sewed up, then that's also useful. So just keep it in mind when you're working to do a chain one at the beginning of each row. And this chain one does not count as a stitch. It is just to keep your row straight, your sides edges straight. So we are on our 3rd row now. Remember, we're doing 6 rows because this is a 6x6 square. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that is our 3rd row. As you can see, we got a little square here, a little rectangle. We are just moving right along. So if you do forget the chain one, you know, it's okay, because that just means your edges will just be a little bit wonky. But honestly, starting out, everyone's edges are a little bit wonky, so don't feel too bad about it. Anyway, we are now at the end of row 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how we count our rows, by the way. So you see, this is row 1, this is row 2, this is row 3, and this is row 4. We are looking for these little bumps right here. Each bump is a row. So we are on row 4, so now we're going to get started on row 5 with that chain 1. And we are going to single crochet along. So we are only learning the very first basic stitch. Ooh, my hook slipped out. You see that? Mistakes happen. It's all right. Just put that loop back on your hook. It's all good. Anyway, we are learning only the most basic stitch for this little guy, Gerald. We are learning to just single crochet. We're learning to chain, and we are learning to slip stitch to finish off our work, which we haven't quite gotten to. Now there are other crochet stitches, obviously, but for the simplicity of this plush, then we're just making to learn, we're gonna keep it simple. We're on row 6 now, by the way. We did our chain 1. We're working down, and we are almost done with this first panel for Gerald. Now this video series is going to take you through all the steps of making Gerald. And I did not explain what I just did right there. I just did it on muscle memory. So let's chain 1, but instead of keeping that chain, we are actually going to cut our yarn, and I do not have scissors, so I'm just going to tear my yarn. I'd recommend cutting it. It's a little hard to tear. Ooh, it is a little hard to tear. Ooh, there we go. My setup is coming all undone. I'm trying to tear yarn. Anyway, instead of keeping that chain, we're just going to pull our yarn all the way through, and that is a slip stitch, and that is our first panel for Gerald right here. So awesome. First panel is done, and we have to make one more of that 6x6 panel because it is going to be the front and back. So this will be the face, and we are going to go back in and embroider some eyes and a little blush to make him all cute. And for the back, you know, it's just gonna be plain. We're not embroidering any other sides of Gerald, actually. We're just embroidering the face, unless you want to use safety eyes, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we are going to be making all the panels of Gerald together. We made the 6x6 panel, and we're going to make one more of those, and I'm going to work pretty quickly on this panel. So let's start with that slip stitch. Nope, that's not a slip stitch. Slip knot. I'm going to use a longer tail of yarn just because I did tear that yarn, and that makes it very thin. So that's why I really don't recommend tearing your yarn. It makes it much harder to work with, and it also has a tendency to split your yarn. So that was a slip knot, and then we're going to do our 7 chains. 4, 5, 6, 7. Awesome. And then we are going to start with our first single crochet. So remember to go into that second chain, not that first chain next to the hook. Do the second chain next to the hook. And if your hook slips out, just feel free to slip it back into the loops. It's all good. But we're going to be working through all the panels of Gerald together. And even though I'll be working more quickly, just feel free to slow down the video, and it'll be okay, you know? You'll get it. Now, you'll have to go back on your work many times while you're learning, and that's also okay. You know, it's perfectly understandable that you make mistakes when you're learning. That's just part of life. That's just part of learning. So, if you mess up and have to restart, or your stitches just don't come out looking right and they're a little loose or a little ugly looking, that's okay. This plush is just for learning and hopefully to inspire you to do more crochet projects in the future. So we're on our 3rd row now, just working quickly. My hook slipped out again. See, you know, it happens. Working quickly is sometimes not the best move, for me at least. I tend to make a lot more mistakes when working quickly, but not on stitches, just my hook slipping out normally. That's our third. Now we're on our fourth. Awesome. We're gonna do our fifth row. My yarn is getting a little caught, so we're gonna pull some of that out. Just remember to keep your yarn loose, otherwise it can get kind of annoying to work with a little bit. Much faster now that the yarn is loose. Much easier to have tension. And the yarn just slips right through your fingers, which is what we want. That stitch was a little hard to get into. There we go. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we are on 6. We're gonna stitch that right up. 2, 3, 6. Oop, my yarn split. Hold on. Let's try that again. And 6. And we are going to do that same thing where we tear our yarn because I still do not have scissors. Okay. And just pull that right through. Make sure to leave a kind of long yarn tail. Mine probably isn't long enough, because we actually need that yarn tail for sewing up Gerald later. It might be long enough. But about like 2, maybe 3 inches of yarn left at the end, so we can sew Gerald up. And now we have the front and back panels of Gerald. So we are going to make the side panels next, and that is going to be in a new video. So I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoyed the first panel. Thanks. Bye.